Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my vanilla world. Each Friday, it's going to be a different vanilla bean recipe. From homemade vanilla that I've made or using the actual bean. So many possibilities. But today, the first vanilla bean in my vanilla world is vanilla sugar cream pie. Now this is a great pie that you're actually doing like a creme brulee on the top. You're going to broil that at the very end. And of course, we're going to have Joe taste test it. The recipe will be in the description below. And actually, next Monday at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time is my live stream. And I'm actually giving away vanilla beans that night. So make sure you check that out because you have to be on the live stream to win those vanilla beans. Let's go make some pie. So the ingredients for our pie today are 2 pints of heavy whipping cream, 1.5 cups of sugar, 8 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of Himalayan salt, 2 tablespoons of homemade vanilla, and 8 tablespoons of butter. Now for the topping, I'm going to talk about that when we go through it, but we're going to use nutmeg, butter, vanilla, cinnamon, and sugar. But when we make that topping, we're going to talk about it. So what we're first going to do is on a heavy pot, we're going to add all of that heavy cream to it. Now we're going to make sure that we only keep it on medium heat because we do not want it to boil. We're going to throw that butter in there. Now the softer your butter is, the faster it will all come together. There's the sugar, the salt, and then of course the cornstarch, and that's what's going to make it thick. Now the funny thing about when you first start stirring it, it's thick, then it's thin, then it's thick. So we are going to just start. I am using a wooden spoon. I don't like to use a whisk when I'm doing this. The wooden spoon seems to work better for me. Now one of the other things that you'll have to do is to pre-cook your pie crust. So I'm going to do that at 400 degrees, 12 minutes. I just want it golden. And see how I used a fork to poke it so that it stays a little flat. There are pie weights you can use, but I just use the fork and it seems to work just fine. So here is our mixture, our pie mixture. And the cornstarch is getting incorporated. The Himalayan salt is starting to melt. You can see some little flakes of that Himalayan salt once in a while, but that will all dissolve. And I'm going to stir this basically constantly. I don't want it to burn on the bottom, and I do not want it to boil at all because then it would change it, it would curdle it. And so it's still pretty thick. The sugar isn't melted all the way yet, and either is the butter. But as you slowly heat that up, it does take probably 15 minutes or so. But all of a sudden it gets really thin, and you think, oh, well, this isn't going to work. But at the point about 15 minutes to 20 minutes, it will start to get thicker. And it's just like when you're making homemade pudding. So here it is getting very thick. I've taken it off of the burner and I'm going to add my vanilla in there. That's 2 tablespoons of homemade vanilla. And I do want to make sure I incorporate it all the way. I want it to not have any vanilla on the edges. I want it all into the pie filling. And so you just take a little bit of time. The color changes just slightly because of the vanilla. And then I'm just going to pour it into those pre-baked pie shells. And I'm going to just divide it as close to it as I can. Now, in the meantime, I am going to turn my oven on at 350 degrees, and this is going to go back in the oven for about 10 minutes. It just helps it in the setting. Now, this is the topping. So I am melting the butter. I have 4 tablespoons of butter, and the cinnamon, the nutmeg. I haven't added the vanilla. I'm going to add the vanilla at the very, very end of it and mix that all up because I want to pour it directly onto those pies. So they've been in the oven for the 10 minutes. I've pulled them out. Then I'm going to, you can just literally just swirl it a little bit. I'm actually going to put it over most of it. Now you can either take the recipe for the topping that has the 4 tablespoons of butter, half a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and 3/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Or you can double that if you want it more of a topping because you are making 2 pies. That's totally up to you. But sometimes I just swirl it around. Sometimes it's more solid choices. Now these are going back into the broiler for only 60 seconds. I have my broiler on low and it just makes it bubbly. Then you're going to have the pies get to room temperature, and then they're going into the refrigerator for at least 4 hours. You can keep it overnight, of course, but it has to really have a time so it can really pull itself together. So we're going to just cut some pies, and of course we're going to let Joe taste test. But when you pull it out, you can see how firm it's gotten from its time in the refrigerator. And it's just a beautiful pie with a great topping. And let's see what Joe thinks. So today Joe's trying vanilla sugar cream pie. So Joe, let's see what you think.
That's good. Thumbs up.
Excellent. Well, that is vanilla sugar cream pie. And I think some people call it a Hoosier pie. But it is a great tasting pie. I love the whole process of when you're making the pudding-like substance of it. And it's thick because the sugar hasn't melted and incorporated in. Then all of a sudden it's very thin. And then all of a sudden, just like when you're making homemade vanilla or homemade pudding, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And then the idea of putting the topping on, putting it back in the oven in the broiler, is fabulous. Totally fabulous. Now, I mix that all together because I put vanilla in that topping. But you can just put melted butter on top and then sprinkle that sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Totally up to you. But this is Sandi. Welcome to my first video of my vanilla world, because I do love vanilla. Every Friday, new video. See you next time.